Guys, we're live. We're back for another power hour. I'm really excited about this one. This is going to be a good one. And I think this is an important conversation to have as entrepreneurs because I'm sure, as these ladies are going to tell you, it's pretty normal in business to have to course correct sometimes. I really don't know any successful people that just picked their niche and picked their client avatar and then that just went on their way. And that was the path they walked down till the end of time. Like a lot of us have tried a lot of things. Some of it has worked, some of it hasn't. And so I'm excited to have this conversation about how to know when to pivot, how to make good decisions about changing things, how to avoid, I'm sure we've all made mistakes in our business, how to avoid some of the mistakes we've made. And hopefully it'll be useful to you guys as you're growing your business. I want our beautiful panel today introduce themselves. Why don't you guys go around, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and I know you guys brought gifts too. So, me and my people are like, we love a bargain. If you're going to give me free stuff, like, I'm going to take you up on it. And I literally go after the show and like get everybody's free stuff because it's always so good. So, you guys are definitely going to want to check out the goodies they brought for you. So, let's go ahead and kick it off. Melissa, can you go first?
Sure. Thank you so much. I've been really looking forward to this. I'm so happy to meet everybody. I'm
Yeah.
Melissa Esmeralda. I am the owner of MEO Marketing Group. I'm a copywriter, marketing strategist, and semi-retired rugby player. I specialize in sales pages, website copy, launches, and full service email marketing. I love working with passionate entrepreneurs. And even though I'm a copywriter, I always do my subject lines last, which is what basically created my lead magnet that I have for you guys today. It's 10 subject line formulas for attention grabbing emails. So even if you don't have an email list, that's okay. If you're pitching clients and you're trying to figure, well, what do I put in the subject line? Like this is a good resource for that, and also has some site hacks and like a little bit some other tips as well. But yeah, thank you again. I'm really excited.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to talk to you and hear more about all your stuff. And what about Callie?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to hear everyone's story as well. So I'm Callie Peterson. Sage is my middle name, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Sage Agency.
You go
We
by
focus
Sage. Is that what I should call you? Not Callie. Is that right?
Callie. Yeah,
Callie, Sage. Okay.
yeah, Callie. You can call me Callie Sage if you want, but
Like, you want to be Callie Sage? You want to be Sage? You just let me know, okay?
yeah, I mean, I'm from Texas, so sometimes you have those middle names. Um, no, we focus on our main offer is Google Ads and making sure that our clients are when they come on board, just that they're ready for Google Ads. A lot of times, sometimes they need to make some tweaks to things before they're going to be profitable with Google Ads. So that's actually my freebie for you guys is a 3-part video series. Is your business ready for Google Ads?
Oh, that's
And so
awesome.
yeah, it's ads are expensive, and I just want to make sure that if you are interested in ads, or if you want to test it out, that it's you're going to make some money off of it. So that's what the video series walks you through, and then we've created like I call it like the marketing trifecta. So our focus is Google Ads, but then we also offer SEO, and then we also offer website conversion. Um, and the three of those basically all support each other so that the ads are profitable.
Yeah, and so for you guys listening too, I know a lot of people got hit in the Google algorithm update, and if you're realizing like, oh, I'm gonna need to like go mess with some ads and like get my traffic back up and get that might be a good option to explore is like going and checking out that freebie and thinking about maybe running some ads to your stuff, right? We're all always, like we're saying on the panel, we're all always changing our strategies. And then Miss Monica, I feel like it's like Monica Day today because your episode of the podcast went live this morning too. So
I
if
saw
you guys,
that, and I like
yeah,
barely am on social media, except lately I have been, and I caught it, and I was like, "Oh, look at this! I'll actually share it."
yeah, I was surprised you did because we talked about that at some. I've been doing so much stuff with you because we were also on a panel, and I remember
Yeah.
you saying you don't do social media, and I was like, oh, she's on there.
I am getting a little bit better. I'm back into like consumption mode right now because I feel like a lot of things are changing in the online landscape, and so like part of that means you have to go out and consume and see what other people are doing. So You can
Yeah.
catch me
Well,
on Instagram occasionally.
yeah, and we just did a really good episode about Shopify, talking about
Yep.
Shopify stores. So if you guys are interested in that as a strategy, you got to go listen to that podcast episode. But introduce, I'm getting way ahead. Of course, not Faith, like getting off track, never. But
Well, okay.
tell
So
everybody who you are, what you
yeah.
do, and
So my
your
name's
good
Monica
history behind
Froese, and nowadays, this panel is great for me because I have many brands actually. I started as Redefining Mom, which is still an active brand that we run and sell products under. I have pivoted more times than I can count, so I can talk about that ad nauseum. But nowadays, we help content creators take their content and turn it into profitable shop listings on Shopify. So that's what we do today, and that's under the brand Empowered Business, and our shop is empoweredshop.com. And most of the things I usually offer for free in the business are like time sensitive things. So I was like, I'm gonna have to come up with something on the fly because I don't know what I told you I was going to tell people about. So what I'm going to do, it's not active yet. You're gonna have to give me till after this call. Is if you go to empoweredshop.com, we have an under $10 category. We have some amazing things in there, and I'm gonna create a coupon code called Power Hour, and you can get anything under $10 in that category for free.
Very fun. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Well, I'm sure people will be grabbing that for sure. Monica's shop is very cool. She's inspired me. I was on freaking Shopify all day yesterday. I was like, this is Monica's fault.
Yeah, it is my fault.
It's all your fault. So I want to talk to you guys. I want to hear from you guys. Like, if you could share maybe like one of the most difficult pivots you've made in your business, and then if looking back on that, if you could give yourself a piece of advice while you were trying to navigate that, like what would you say to yourself? I know this is like, I'm like put everybody on the spot.
I'll go first. I'll drink through the fire hose. So my background's in corporate marketing. I was in corporate for 11 years. And when I started Redefining Mom, it was just a blog to vent about a lot of bad policies for moms in this country. And that led me, like, I did not intend to make money on that blog. At the time, Pinterest was like really big and their ad platform was new. And like the marketer that I am at heart, I was like, I am going to master this. But I knew that sending people to free blog posts didn't make any sense if I wasn't really selling anything. So I got really good at Pinterest advertising and converting it into sales for our digital products. And that led me to fly out to Pinterest. I got to meet the CEO right after I gave birth to my second daughter. And I ended up developing a course on Pinterest ads because everyone was asked, when someone asks you something like a million times, like just monetize it, I guess. So I did. And it blew up and I made a crap ton of money on it and I burned out on it. And I built this house that I'm sitting in right now in 2020. And I looked at my then husband after I built it and I said, I am going to blow up my business. I hate it. And he goes, didn't we just build a house? I was like, yeah, but no biggie. I'm not going to miss a beat when I do this. And I didn't, but it was really hard in the moment because it was what I was known for. And it was still very actively making us a lot of money. But if I had to talk about it one more day, I had all my spark had gone out of me. And I really am passionate about like helping. My big passion is that everyone should have financial equality. And like, it just felt like, why am I talking about Pinterest every day of my life? But that led to a little bit of a depression for me because it was like to let go of it was a lot. And then it was like, what if the next thing doesn't work? Honestly, if I could go back, I would have let go of it sooner. I would have let go of it sooner. Building a business on someone else's platform. And I'm curious what Callie has to say about this because your business is built around Google, right? Like doing Google ads. It's not for the faint of heart because you have no control over what they do. So every time they make a change, you're at their mercy.
She's like, you're speaking to the choir. I can see on her face. She's like, oh, go off, girl.
And so like in a way, like I do teach the Shopify platform, but I'm very careful in my marketing now. Like one of the biggest lessons I learned from that is I teach from a very strategic mindset about shops in general. And while I will show you how to use Shopify for what I teach, I'm very marketing oriented. And we have WooCommerce students, we have people on other platforms. And I'm very careful about that because Shopify changes stuff and I just can't deal anymore in my life with me being at the mercy of another platform. And that is just something to consider.
I think we're at a time too where these platforms are very unstable. Like I think the reality for all of us is like 10 years from now, all this shit is going to look different, right? So it's like right now, Shopify is a huge player. Obviously, they have a ton of stakeholders and but we don't know what's around the corner, right? Like tech is changing so fast. And so I just think like I was telling somebody the other day because she was like really researching like to find the perfect course platform. And I was like, look, the reality is in 3 weeks, all the research you're doing will be irrelevant because it's going to be like, I mean, like, you know, like I'm on Kajabi, but now there's so many other options. But I was telling her like 3 years ago, none of this shit existed. So I could have researched all I wanted. I still wouldn't know what all the options really are going to be in the future. And so I think that's a good point of like not tying yourself too much to one platform when you're monetizing, because we don't know like which platforms are going to be around, what they're going to look like, what they're ethically going to do, if they're going to do something weird. Yeah, and all of that different stuff. And the other thing I wanted to say that I thought was a really good point that you said was like sometimes even when you know in your gut like it's the right move, it doesn't make it easy and it doesn't feel good. And like our brains don't like change, right? Our human brains love certainty. And so with your business you had, and I've known Monica a long time. Like I remember when you did that because we've been around the same circles. And that course she had was like a powerhouse. It was like that really was what you were known for. That was like that course was like the course for that. Like everyone talked about it, everyone recommended it. I know tons of people that had done it. And so I'm sure to like make that change, our brains are like, wait a minute, like this is very certain, this is very uncertain. Even when you know in your gut, this is not where we're going. We've got to like change the ship direction a little bit. Like we've gone off course. This is not where I want to end up. Even when you know you're doing the right thing, our brains still freak out. It still feels like terrifying and frankly like bad, I think, a lot of times when we make these changes. So thank you for being honest about that and sharing that.
What I also learned in hindsight, because I retired that in 2020. So if you put out good stuff, people will follow you. And my best students from that course are still in now the program I do today. Like, so it's never underestimate, like people are watching. And so just because you make a change doesn't mean, like my fear was that I was going to lose everything, right? Because like and there were mad people. There were mad people, let me tell you. But at the end of the day, and most of them end up still following me because I put out good stuff, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it feels like when you make a change like that, it's like, well, I have to start all the way back at zero and I'm like losing. But I think like we often underestimate, our community, the power of the community we've built, the amount of assets that we have and the amount of experience that we have. Like you take all that with you. So I think that's important to remember too. If you guys are thinking about pivoting, you don't ever really have to go all the way. It might be hard, right? I'm sure it was a difficult transition, but you don't really have to go all the way and start from nothing and rebuild everything again. It's like you get to bring some of those assets with you. And then what about you, Callie? Do you have times in your business where you pivoted? Did you start with Google Ads? Tell us
so I'll journey to that, but just following up on everything you're saying. I mean, like, for example, right now, Shopify is changing their tracking with Google Ads. So I'm having to basically redo all the work I've done before. I mean, Google has just been on a rampage for like 3 years, just nonstop changes. They even changed the design platform. I'm like, why? Can't we, like, it looks fine. Just leave it. But to your point, I think personally, you know, I can be quite analytical and get really stuck in my head and like, I have to make the right choice. And I think one thing that I learned is even if you're a solopreneur, you're probably going to end up getting some type of support from someone when you're using a new platform or a website developer or whatever it is. And I think actually before you choose a platform, deciding who you're going to work with and like who you want to work with, and then what platforms do they know or do they use? Because if you might go with Kajabi, but you want to work with this website developer and he's like, I've never used Kajabi website before, you know? And so I think they all have their pros and cons and they always will. And like you say, in the next 3 years, they might be something totally different. But I think it really boils down to what you know and your team knows, and then make a decision based on that, is what I've found. But yeah, just to answer your question, so I've actually been using Google Ads since 2001, so it's like been a big difference, but it was always just a part of what I offered. So my degree is in marketing. I've always worked in marketing, sales, and when I launched my business in 2018, because I have so much experience, I was just doing whatever the clients wanted, and so I was just wearing so many hats. A lot of it was social media, which I personally just cannot stand. I like hate being on it, even just for my, and so I'm like what's the shoemaker's child. Like, I do my social media at the very end because I've been working on all my other client stuff. So don't judge me. But I just hated it. I hated
This
it.
is a good thing to think about for you guys listening too. And we talk about this in the mastermind where I'm like, don't build a business that you are going to hate. I'm like, you could just stay at your 9 to 5. Like, we don't have to go through all this to save yourself a lot of time and money. Just work the job you already have that you hate.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons for sure. For me, the biggest pro for starting my own business was location and like flexibility. Like, I love traveling. So I've worked from Australia, I've worked from Denmark, like I've worked all over the world, and there's sacrifices, but I would never give it up. I mean, there's definitely times when I was like, what am I doing? But yeah, in 2021, I was like, okay, I just want to only do Google Ads. I don't want to do any of this other stuff. And I actually wrote like an email template that I was going to send to some of my clients, lovingly breaking up with them. And I was so nervous to send it. It was during the pandemic. So I had like a glass of wine and like all my girlfriends on Zoom, and they're like, just send it, just press send. And I'm like, ah. And so I sent it to my first client, basically just raising my prices like ×5, and broke up with a handful of my biggest clients. And so, yeah, it was scary. But back to your question, like, when do you know? It's always going to be a risk, but owning your own business is a risk. Like, that's just a risk, full stop, right? And so I think the theme so far that's showing is like, you don't need to be miserable. And I think entrepreneurs are really savvy. Like, we can wear a lot of hats. And I actually tripled my business that year. I grew a team. Like, it was the best thing I have done for my business, without a doubt. And then I started back adding on SEO and website conversion, mainly just because it supports the ads. But I love working on Google Ads. Like, it really lights me up, whereas all the other stuff did not light me up. So I think that's the indication.
I love that you said that. And Monica kind of mentioned too, she's like, I didn't miss a beat. And I know Monica, she's kind of like me. I'm like, I don't mess with my bottom line. Like, my bottom line is my bottom line. And like, and so the other thing I'll say too, if you guys are thinking about pivoting, to your point, like where you're talking about like making strategic risks, like strategic risk taking, right? And sometimes I think like people think you're an entrepreneur and you want to pivot. So it's like, you just like burn everything down. And it's like, these pivots, especially if you already have bills, I mean, I have a team I have to pay and people, right? And so it doesn't mean I can't pivot, but it does mean I have to like really take seriously the risks and the strategy, and pad the bank account up, right? So if I were wanting to close, the mastermind for me is a multiple 6-figure offer. It's the majority, almost all of my revenue comes from that one offer right now, right? I don't really have any one-on-one clients or small groups anymore. I pretty much just have the one offer. And if I wanted to close that, like, we would have to make a plan as far as like, how do we pad the revenue up? How do I make sure I have payroll covered for a few months? Like, I always say, like, I think business, we talk about like the kitchen remodel rule in the mastermind a lot. I'm like, it's going to take longer and cost more money than you think. Every change you make, and every change I make in business, I always say I'm a strategic pessimist. I'm like, I just assume it's going to cost me more money than the team is telling me or whoever's telling me. It's going to take us a lot longer than we think. And then it's like, through that, it's like, can I afford to like ride this out? And if not, what do I need to do to get those reserves in?
Yeah.
And so I think it's great.
Yeah, I think it's cool to have a billion ideas as an entrepreneur too. Like, I think let yourself dream. Like, I have fantasies of being a garden consultant right now. Am I going to do that? Like, no, probably not. But I mean, I'm going down that algorithm hole on social media and I'm like, oh, that sounds amazing. I've had, I love
Funny.
Like, you know, like you can still let yourself be creative without it being like a 180-degree pivot too.
Yeah, totally. And then what about you, Melissa? I want to hear from you too. Can you tell us about a
Yeah,
time like you pivoted and like what kind of advice would you give yourself like to navigate that transition?
Yeah, I pivoted pretty early on into business. It was my first year because when I first got into copywriting, I was just writing blogs, occasional website copy. And after a while, I realized I don't enjoy writing blogs and I felt guilty. I was like, well, how am I going to get experience writing other types of copy if I haven't written other types of copy? So you're kind of in this weird catch-22 that happens to everybody, especially when you're brand new and like in your first year of business when you're still figuring things out. Like I'm a recovering perfectionist, so like if something isn't right to the T when I give it to clients, I don't want them to be like, oh well, I don't like this, or like I don't know what this is, because like I'm not afraid of rejection. Like if I pitch someone and tell me no, it's something I don't need right now, that's okay. But what I'm worried about is doing something the wrong way. And I wish I could tell myself that like it's okay to do things wrong because it's not necessarily wrong. It's still going to be a learning lesson. But if you just sit there and think, oh well, I don't enjoy doing this thing in my business, but I'm just not going to change anything about it because it's more comfortable to stay where I am right now, rather than make a plan for it. Because we do get a lot of ideas and sometimes we think, oh, I want to do something completely different, but you still have to give things time. And if you do something one time, sometimes it's maybe just like a not a right fit client. But if you do something multiple times and you're still not enjoying it, then that's probably a good sign that it really isn't a good fit for you. And then you can start making a plan, because I think it's really easy to just get really excited about a new strategy, a new plan. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to try like a webinar. I'm going to start a course or something like that. But then you realize like, oh, but I can't do that yet because I have to do all these steps in between. It's hard to just stick to a plan, to stick to one thing, but you do have to give things time. And a lot of things in entrepreneurship are just up and down, like unpredictable. You can have really great months one way, and then maybe things aren't so great in another way in the same month at the same time. And it's just part of the learning process. And that's okay. It happens to everybody. And then once you get more experience and realize like, okay, this is the niche that I really enjoy, or industry, or whatever way you're pivoting, it feels a lot better. But making that first step and realizing, oh, I have less experience in this, it doesn't feel good. But it is kind of like a lot of what entrepreneurship is, because we've been doing something for a while, like what Monica was saying, like this is what you're known for, and then trying to pivot to something else, it's really uncomfortable. And I think feeling uncomfortable is fine, as long as you're able to separate that as like, okay, am I feeling uncomfortable just because this is new, or because I don't enjoy it? And I think it can get pretty easy to think, oh well, I'm uncomfortable just because like I don't like it, let me just try something new, without really thinking about it. But because I'm a recovering perfectionist, it took me a little bit of time to pivot into sales copy, into launch copy, just because like I knew how to do it, but it takes some time to like get yourself out there. But like you'd be surprised just like how quickly you can get that experience just by saying like, this is who I am, this is what I do. And then people quickly realize like, oh yeah, you know what you're doing. Like I know somebody else who could use your help. And you're like, oh wow, it was like, it's not easy, but like, it feels easier once you start getting some momentum going. But again, you have to give things some time. And I know that's hard, especially when we're hearing about people being like, oh, I just had like a 6-figure year and like have like 6 months of business or something like that, which does happen. But I mean, like it's
those overnight success stories are like poison, you guys. They are like poison.
Yes,
they're
exactly.
They're so toxic. It's like the most toxic thing I think about this industry. I have kind of an unpopular opinion, maybe. I'm curious what you guys think. I was coaching someone the other day and I told her, I was like, you know, she's like talking about how her business used to be so exciting. And I was like, I love that my business is boring. I fucking love that it's boring. I'm like, I love that. And I think in the beginning, like I used to really, it was like I wanted my satisfaction with life and my purpose and my meaning. And it was also incredibly up and down though, right? So it was like, you know, you're like up on top and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the best. And then it was like, but then I would like have these crashes. And I just realized like, we talk about going from the entrepreneur roller coaster with the up and downs to like the entrepreneur train, just like fucking steady, like, right. And now my business, I feel like it's so steady. It is, and it's not that I don't love it. I don't hate it, but it's not the most exciting part of my life. I feel like I've kind of grown into this maturity with the business where I'm like, I kind of love that it's boring to me at this point. I kind of love that like we're good at it and I know the team is doing what they're doing and we have all the processes and everybody knows what's going on. And I kind of love that each quarter is pretty similar, right? And each year even is getting like more and more predictable. And I kind of love that the business is boring. But I do coach a lot of entrepreneurs, right? And like to what you guys are saying, you're like, well, you want to like make sure you love it. You don't want to build a job you hate. So how do you navigate that line between having a job that a business that feels steady, that isn't on like so volatile all the time, emotionally volatile, financially volatile, and so up and down? Like, how do you balance that and have something steady, but then also like still love what you're doing and not be bored when we are entrepreneurs? Monica has thoughts. I can see her wheels turning.
So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head and you said it's not the most exciting part of your life. So obviously you have fulfillment outside of it. And this is actually a big topic of conversation with my therapist, because he's told me that I
That's guilty as charged. Right? I'm like, yes.
I place too much of my value on my career. And what I would tell her was, yeah, but like, while I feel like I'm being a train wreck in my personal life, which I'm really not, I have 2 fabulous kids. I'm actually really put together. But that being said, like, personal things can be hard, but I always felt like I excelled in my career and in my business. And so when there were ebbs and flows, and you're going to have it, I've had rough months, a rough year, it's going to happen. Then it pulls down your self-worth. And she's like, you have to detach that. And so honestly, like, I do think in order to be like because it is necessary for us to be innovative and creative as entrepreneurs. Market conditions change, like when Google decides to do whatever it wants to do today or tomorrow. And so like, it's important to like feed your, someone said once that like your business should never be your sole source of contentment. Like that's not your business's job. It's not your business's job to make you fulfilled and content. Like, that's your job. And I think I took that to heart a lot. And that's how I like, there are a lot of things I have to do every day in the business that I don't love. Like operating a business, there's like a lot. I like when I get a tax notice from payroll from one state, and I'm like, oh, the state stinks and I don't want to deal with this, but you got to deal with it. Like, I don't want to deal with that in the morning when I go to my PO box, but it's part of
that's what being the boss is, right? Being the boss is doing all, it's like calling the hard shots, making hard decisions, having hard conversations with people. I mean, there's a lot of things about it, I think, that are not very fun that people don't talk
like
about.
Underperforming contractors or employees, all of that stuff, like your HR and your finance person, and you're like all these roles at once. It's
paying all my bills. I'm like, God, and like, you know, like
I will tell you when I will say from the newbie conversation about unrealistic expectations, I will fire back 100% of the time when someone comes at me that's been trying they're like 2 weeks in or 6 weeks in or 6 months, I don't even care. And they're like trying to compare themselves to me. And I'm like, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that, because I've had to show up at this desk for 10 years every day when I did not want to. So I should be further along than you. Like, it's not a game either. So stop benchmarking yourself against other people. But man, when I almost like at this point can tell you right now when people are going to succeed or not, because they focus on the wrong things. Like when I show up every day, I focus on myself and what I'm doing, not what other people are doing or like what their metrics are. I don't compare myself anymore. And it's kind of liberating, actually.
It's the best, right? I'm always just like, well, and people say that to me sometimes because they're like, you have so many people on your platform all the time and you're doing these events with all these people. Like, aren't you worried like they're going to like, I don't know, like steal your clients or something? I'm like, some of my clients are going to buy stuff from them and some of their people are going to buy stuff from me. I'm like, it's all fine. It's like, I just don't feel like worried about it. I'm like, the people that need coaching from me and want to work with me will work with me. I was like, I just don't feel like that's going to change ever. And I was like, and then it's like, am I going to shrink my world and like, not meet all these awesome people, not have all these connections, not have these conversations, not put the value out to the community because I'm like, well, they might see Monica and like leave me.
Okay, so mild soapbox, and I hope, because I think of most people who follow you are probably identify as women, right? I worked in corporate America in a very toxic male environment. And when I was in it, it was very toxic to my mental health. However, I took some things away from it in hindsight. Now that I run my own business, I have sat in boardrooms that were awfully toxic, like sexual harassment type things happened, like really bad things happened. But you know, the thing that I took away from men is they leave emotion out of it. And the way they approach business is they rub. What do you think is happening on the golf course besides closing deals? They don't keep secrets. It's a competition to them. And for some reason, I have a lot of reasons of why. It's like, but
let me tell you about the patriarchy.
But the patriarchy is designed to make us infight, by the way. And I see it in with women in business that like, and I saw it in corporate because there was only so many spots at the table for women. And they were, instead of us like addressing the bigger systematic issue of the patriarchy, we fought with each other. And it's like, hello, stop doing that. Men don't do it. And it's why they run the world still. So they compete and they don't hold things back. Take that for what it's worth. But I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah. And then we can like leave the other toxic bullshit that's not useful.
Exactly.
I don't even remember what the original question was. Kelly, do you have
an answer? I was just going to say, the original question was like essentially boring.
Oh, I was talking about being boring in my business. How boring. I was like, I love my business is boring. I think it's kind of the best.
Yeah, well, it's funny because this year I've really gone through a, I don't know what you want to call it, ego check, total like.
Business will humble you. Monica and I were talking about it the other day. Like your business will humble you.
Oh yeah, but also my business has been my life for years now, and I'm trying to grow my family. I'm actively reducing my stress. Like I want to have a life. And I realized that I was like really fighting myself because I'm like, if I'm not a stressed out business owner, then like, who am I? You know? It's been some
this
time.
Is such an entrepreneur. I feel like this is like such an entrepreneur struggle.
I was addicted to my inbox, you know, like I was addicted to my inbox. I was addicted to that, ooh, yeah, something's happening. Ooh, sales call. Ooh, let's, you know, like, and now I get to just step back every hour or like take a lunch break or walk outside or whatever. I mean, I have to be very intentional about it, but I'm starting to really love my life again. And my business gets to be part of that. It just doesn't get to be all of it, you know? Yeah. And I think especially, you know, I'm married, I don't know, you know, who has partners, whatever, but I do think it really takes a special person to be married to an entrepreneur because we are kind of married to our businesses, you know? And so, yeah, it's funny though, because every so often I'll be like, ooh, I haven't really worked like 10 hours a day recently. And like, maybe I should do that. And I'm like, no. Like the numbers are good. It's all good. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's what you have worked so hard to create. So yeah, I'm kind of in that transition right now. And something I tell myself a lot, especially because I like to make the right choice, I am learning, not losing, you know, like I always try to, if I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have spent thousands of dollars on XYZ. It's like, okay, but what do I know now that I didn't know then? And I won't make that decision again or whatever that might be. And so I just like to tell myself that a lot because you can really kind of be hard on yourself as an entrepreneur and a business owner and compare yourself and all that. But regardless of comparing, it's more just like, oh, I want to be wherever I want to be and I'm not. And it's like, okay, well, but look at how far you have come, you know?
Yeah. I always say in the mastermind, and I coach a lot of people that are just scared to like make a move or try something and see what happened. And a lot of times that's a sign to me that they're usually pretty harsh on themselves, like in the present. Right. And so I'm always like, if you're going to go and beat up on past self, all you're doing is making current self like not trust you and feel like they aren't safe to make a move because they know if you decide something and try something, that future you is waiting with that damn beating stick to turn around and shame yourself. And I mean, we've all, I'm sure, I could tell you some very costly mistakes I've made like in my time as like an entrepreneur. I'm sure we've all made mistakes where we look back and we're like, I wouldn't have done that, but you just don't know at the time. And like the reality is like that's the game we're in. Like there's no one that kind of gets through unscathed. Yeah. Like we're all going to have our own like little failures and trials.
Yeah. I think also one thing that really helped me a lot through the pivot is if you're not paying yourself already, this is to the audience, like start paying yourself right now, even if it's $20 a week, like just start paying yourself, put $100 towards you and $100 towards saving, you actually don't miss it when you just set up that automatic. I don't know if anyone's heard of Profit First, but I did that in 2021 as well. And that was huge. I paid off all my debt. I started paying myself. So it's so bizarre when you look at, like, for me, when I look at like a big chunk of money, I'm like, oh, that's not that much. But when I divvy it down to things, I'm like, oh, this is actually a lot of money and covers a lot. Mm-hmm. So I think that is, for me, that allowed me to also pivot. Because I that baseline.
I hired a financial advisor, I think about 1.5 years ago, that like changed my life. And I was doing multiple six figures. This is embarrassing to admit, but this is the truth. I was making multiple six figures of revenue and I was very good at sales. I had no idea how much money was going in and out. And I was just paying myself random amounts of money. And I didn't have very many bills, like, because we were still living very cheap. And like, we hadn't changed our lifestyle like at all or anything. So I just knew there was like money there. I had no idea how much there was, how much was going out. And it was extremely stressful. Like, I'm so much better off now, like that I look at those numbers, that I know I can tell you exactly what our expenses. We have 14,000 that goes out every month, like to pay everybody on payroll, to pay the expenses, to run the business cost me $14,000, right? And so then everything on top of that is profit for the business. And our business is profitable, so we do make that. But that's a lot of money to be flying around and not know, like, and it just caused me so much stress. And it's really hard to be able to assess, can we make a pivot? Can I afford to do something when you don't look at your numbers and you don't look at your finances? And as someone who has been totally guilty of this and just wanted nothing to do with any of it, I'll tell you, you're a lot better off like getting financially literate and looking at those numbers. And it's the best money I ever spent, was like getting all of those systems in place and like getting payroll set up. So I'm totally with you. Like, start looking at least look at your profit and loss every month, please.
As women, we want to feel safe, like fundamentally, and that will help you feel safe in your business.
Yeah, I feel so much more secure now. And like, even when we have a low sales month, I know like we have reserve, right? So like, I have it all kind of mapped out where like I have a launch model business. So like, we do have months where we have $30,000 or more of revenue come in, but that's not every month. So like, those numbers used to fall down. And me, as someone who grew up in poverty, I would just panic, right? And then what I think happens to a lot of us is we'll have those moments of panic in our business. And then we're like, I should launch a high ticket program. I should do one-on-one coaching. And we'll do weird shit in our business because we're like triggered. And I think that's like one of my lessons about not doing things from that energy. I'm like, I only make strategic business decisions. I don't make emotional business decisions, because I used to be a very emotional ass business owner. Right? I'd be like, oh my God, we made 30,000. Now we only have 10. Oh my God, let's like change the business model. And like, you know, it made my team crazy. It made me crazy. I don't think it was a good experience for the clients either. And so now that everything is kind of calm and slower, it's like, yeah, I had to give that dopamine up, right? And like give up the kind of excitement of it. And it does feel boring to me at times, but it also like, it does feel so much more secure. And there are I wouldn't trade it to go back. I can tell you guys that. And then what about you, Melissa? We got to get to you too.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about having a boring business, because like honestly, it is really nice. Which sounds kind of weird.
Kind of the best, right? I was like,
but like,
have you ever?
Exactly, yeah.
Like, she's like, I just don't have the passion. I was like, have you ever considered that this is maybe awesome? Like, we're just making all this money and it's boring. Like, it's kind of great.
You're still passionate about it, but it's not like the constant stress of like, oh my God, we have no money this month, or I need to try something else. Because like what Callie was saying, like it is very easy to fall into like this cycle of, well, I have to work 10 hours today, otherwise I'm not being productive. And it's hard to get out of that, because like I'm the same way. Like it's really difficult to, like what Monica was saying, it's hard to detach your self-worth from what your revenue is, or how many new members you have, or some type of benchmark, because things happen all the time and not everything is going to be the same. So being able to try to separate that is super important, because like I had a bit of an identity crisis when I stopped playing rugby to start a business. I was like, well, I've been Melissa the rugby player for so long. Like, who is Melissa the copywriter? So like, I think that helps me to not say
like she's a stranger.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, who is this new person? After I'm like, hey, I'm a copywriter. But like, it definitely did help with not getting too attached to my business, because I love what I do and I love marketing. But also I have a life outside of it. And like, I wouldn't want to work 24 hours a day. Like, who would want to work for that amount of time? Like, it's healthy to be able to have relationships outside of it, have other hobbies, to take trips and not work on those trips. Like, when I went to Spain and Ireland for 2 weeks, I would get this anxiety, even though like I didn't need to work. Like, it was vacation. I was like, oh, well, what if I just check my inbox? Like, what if somebody just emailed me something?
Gosh,
and like, there were no emergencies.
So true.
Yeah, and there's no emergencies in marketing.
I feel like people don't talk about that with entrepreneurship a lot. Like, people talk about like the time freedom, right? But like, the thing with time freedom is like, I could also be working and making more money. And so like, you have to be able to like, I mean, for someone like me that grew up, that's like, was poor and is kind of like a hustler in my heart, like, it is hard to be like, yeah, I can take as much time off as I want, but like, I know if I work more, I'm going to make more money. And like that, it is like a real, it doesn't feel the way I think people think, where it's like, oh yeah, there's money coming in and I can take time off. But it's also like in the back of my brain's always like, but we could like make more sales. Like, you could like blah, blah, blah. Like, we could do this other business. We could do this other income stream. We could do this other project. And it's like, you have to be able to say no to money, which it doesn't actually, like, I don't think really become easier to do once you have money. Like, I mean, it does to the extent that you can survive, right? And it's not like you don't like have to, like, you have a choice, but I don't think that choice feels the way a lot of people think, right? Yeah, so I love that you said that.
Yeah, because you do that. I feel like that's something that's just kind of like the benefits that people see like early on into entrepreneurship. They're like, oh, I can just take a couple weeks off. I can work maybe 3 hours a day. You can, but it doesn't happen right away. You do have to work really hard to get there. And like, you can't do it all the time for the most part. And like, yes, it does feel great, but at the same time, you're like, but I should also probably be working. But like with everything else, like, it does take time, it does take practice. And like, if you have like digital products or something else that could have some more revenue coming in, like, that definitely helps out a lot too.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the fun is what keeps you going in the beginning. And like, I worked like constantly in the beginning and it was fun. But like, the bigger it grows, the more responsibility it becomes too. And that weight of responsibility, it's much different. Like, and when you're getting started, if the tide turns and you start taking off, profit is likely going to be much more plentiful. And then you start spending more. And then you, like, I have payroll as well. And one of the biggest lessons I had with payroll was, oh, this is like cash that has to come out of my bank every 2 weeks versus paying a contractor. You can use a business credit card. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, no. Like, and that's when cash flow became when I really got, and I have my MBA in finance. So like, I am not like dumb to these concepts. And yet it hit me like a ton of bricks that suddenly, oh, I'm like responsible for like their livelihood. And it has to be cash. That money has to already have been made. You can't just like, not pay someone when they're an employee.
And that makes like, I'll tell you guys too that are listening to this, if you're like just starting, like, you know, we all have been there. We all had just started at one point too. And we're trying to like, kind of, I feel like dispel some like wisdom upon, right? Like what we would do to our past selves. But I'll tell you guys, like, you know, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs that just feel like they don't want to risk wasting time and money in the beginning. And they really want to play things out and know how it's going to work and know if their idea is good. And I'm like, you just have to test things. You have to be willing to waste time and money. And I'll tell you, if it's hard for you to do that now, it only gets more fucking expensive as you go, because your time is more valuable. You have less of it. There's more people wanting it. Every day I sit in this office, the team wants my time. You know, my partner wants my time. My family wants my time. The clients want my time. There's people doing collaborations that want to do interviews. It's like, everybody wants more of your time. You just have less time. And then everything is more expensive. It's just like, I'm always like, a business is just like a little time and money gremlin. It just wants more time and more money from you. And as it grows, it gets harder. And so if there's something you think you want to try, do it now before you have payroll. When I look back at like past me at the beginning, I'm like, damn, I'm like, she could have did anything. I'm like, I could have done anything. Right. And it's like, I love my team, but sometimes I think back on those days of being in the beginning and I miss it, because I'm like, I could just do whatever I wanted. And I have to like talk to other people and see how the team was and clear everybody's schedules and get everybody on it. I was just like, I could just do it. And like, and I didn't have to worry about if it didn't work. oh, there's $14,000 of expenses coming out that have to be covered, right? It was, so I'll just tell you, it can feel so scary in the beginning, like everything is a make or break moment. And just know that that's not true. Like you've got less to lose than ever. So I'm like, roll the dice, like try some weird stuff. Like just go out there and see kind of what resonates with you. Because once you have like, you know, having the business is great and having a boring business is great, but I'm locked in. I have people that have year contracts with me, right? I have a team of people that rely on my business to feed their children. It's something I take very seriously. Like I can't just like become a dating coach tomorrow if I want. It's like, you know, that would take probably years at this point for me to make that transition. So I'll just tell you, just do some weird stuff, try it out. It's going to require you to risk some time and money, but this is the lowest the stakes will ever be. As you make more money and you make, you know, the business grows, there's more demands on your time. And it just feels like, to me, it just feels like harder to do those kinds of things in some ways. In some ways it's easier because I have the team and like, you know, I would die without my team. Like I could not run my business without them. It really would be impossible. So, you know, I'm not knocking that. But anyway, this was such a great conversation. I feel like we should do like one little mic drop for everybody, like before we go. And I'll have you guys plug your gifts again for anybody that just tuned on, because I saw some people jump on. But what would you say, like, if you could give one piece of advice when you were like really going through it and you were like, I don't know if I should change, I don't know if I should do it, like, what would you say? Just give your best little pep talk to our people here that might be going through something like that or going through a change right now in their life or in their business. No pressure.
Well, I was just going to say, going back to what you were saying earlier about there's always going to be other people offering what you offer, but you are the common denominator of, you know, you're going to attract your people. You're going to go through some great clients, but I've kissed a lot of frogs too. But you don't know who's going to be your people until you go through it. And so
that's a good one.
Yeah, I just think, you know, just do it. Like,
and there's room for you. There's room for you to like be successful and for other people to be successful.
There's 8 billion people on this planet. There's plenty of room. And, you know, and like, just, I think try not to get stuck in your head and just try it. And, you know, and if you're like, oh, do I stick with this? Do I not? You know, I think also having a system, like you coach people there. When I think back on every part of when my business really grew or really had a moment is because I was getting support from other people who had been there and done that. And whether it's a financial advisor or profit first or growing a team or whatever, it's like, you just cannot do this alone.
That's good advice too. It can be very isolating.
Get support.
Yeah. I think that's the entrepreneur urge to isolate yourself with your business. You have to resist it. What about you, Monica? You have a mic drop for everybody. What would you tell everybody? Give us a truth bomb.
I mean, the reality is, like, I think you even said it earlier about entrepreneurship is risk. It just is. And with that, first of all, it does take a special person to do it, because like there's no one paying my paycheck but me. That's risk. It just is. But also, got to let go of the perfectionism. Like, and I am a type A person saying that, and I have to move so much faster than my innate self wants to be comfortable with, but it is the reality of being an entrepreneur. And so when I say, like, when you say like people you just got to put it out there. Listen, the amount of people who just don't start, it's like, you don't know anything until you get the data back. Everything in business revolves around the data. And if you don't try, like the amount of people would say to me, well, that didn't work. And I'd be like, well, how many people saw it? 5 people. What? You didn't try. Go back.
One of my favorite stories from the mastermind is I coached someone once and she came on the call. I mean, she was like devastated. She was like crying and she's like, I've been at this for so long and my launch and I only made 2 sales and blah, blah. And I'm talking to her. And then I looked at her data and she only had 7 page views on her page. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, the stories we tell ourselves about like, oh, it's all a failure. I'm like, this is like, I see nothing but potential. Like, we got to go get more data. Like, let's get, like, this looks like a good start. Let's go get some more numbers. And like, then we can decide what all this means. But I was like, we don't even have enough data to know, like, we've had like some really down launches, and it would be so easy for me to say, oh my gosh, no one wants to buy the course anymore. But you know what the reality is that we have a lead gen / getting people to show up live
It's actually getting people to show up live has been much more difficult, because when you look at the conversion rate of the people who are showing up live, it's actually phenomenal. It's actually higher than it used to be. It's not a program problem. It's getting people to actually show up problem. But how easy would it be for me to say, well, let's just implode this because it's clearly not working anymore. But that's what happens when you don't look at the numbers. It's like peeling back an onion.
Yeah. So that's a good reminder for you guys. Look at your numbers. Right. It's like our brain. I used to do this all the time to my assistant too, and it would drive her crazy because I'd always be like, nobody listens to the podcast. Nobody likes the podcast. It's a waste of my time. And she's like, the podcast is your biggest platform. It's because I never looked at the numbers. Right. So I just record it. I used to just record it on my own. So I'm just like at my mic, at my desk, recording the thing and then putting it in the folder. And I was so used to being live at that time and being on social media where I have all that instant feedback about everything else. The podcast, I don't ever really hear about, right? And she's like, you need to go look at the analytics. And when I looked at the analytics, it's like, oh, every month the podcast has grown. It's literally our biggest platform. And I'm just like, nobody likes it. It's a waste of my time. And if you don't have data, your brain will fill it in with stories. So make sure you get data because you don't want your own narrative. Yeah. And then what about you, Melissa? Do you have like a final piece of advice you'd leave everybody with if they're struggling?
Yeah, those are great points. I love looking at data too, and like again, it's so easy to think, oh well, it failed, but you just don't have a big enough audience yet. I think a couple of things I would add is that it's okay to not know everything. And it's okay to look for outside resources and to not look at them as business expenses, although they are business expenses, but see them as an investment. So it's getting back your time. Like if you don't know how to do like a tech thing, outsource that if possible, like as early as possible in your business, because you know you're going to grow into that later on. Even if it feels really early, maybe you need some mentorship. Find the right mentor, because you can probably figure out a lot of things on your own, but being able to have some like trusted resources, some business friends that are like a little bit ahead of you, or maybe just like on the same level as you, and to make it feel less lonely, because we don't have to be so hard on ourselves, but we do it all the time, especially for like high achievers who like left like a toxic work environment, like corporate jobs. They're like, oh, well, that didn't go as planned. Like, it's so easy to like make yourself stuck in your little hole, but be able to just like articulate some frustrations that you're having and realizing like, oh, well, actually, this is a very common frustration. And then be able to collaborate with other people. Like it makes it so much easier. Entrepreneurship is really fun, even if your business is quote unquote boring, but it's super fulfilling too. And like having a life outside of it is important too.
Yeah, I'm completely unemployable at this point. I'm like, there's no way I could have a boss. Like, like I like being the boss a lot better than I like having a boss. Don't get me wrong. As much as I say like it's stressful and everything, I'm like, I'm still living my best life over here. Like I know that, right? Yeah. Let's go around really quick one more time. You guys tell everybody, where can we stalk you? Like, where's the best place on the internet to find you? Don't physically stalk them, you guys, but internet stalk them. Where can we internet stalk you? And then plug your free gift one more time, because there's a couple of new people that jumped on and I want to make sure everybody gets your guys' stuff. So Callie, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So Callie Peterson, it's the Danish spelling with S-E-N. I'm on LinkedIn most. You can also just find everything we offer at thesageagency.com. And my freebie, which we'll have a link to, is it's a 3-part video series, very short, less than 5-minute videos. Is your business ready for Google Ads? And I walk you through how to figure that out. And if it's not ready, what you can do to get ready.
That's great. That's so valuable. And then what about you, Monica?
Well, since all of my offers are timely usually, and this is going to live out in the space forever, I am going to give a coupon code instead. So mainly, like if you want to see everything I have to do, I put out there, it's at empoweredshop.com. There's an under $10 category there with really great stuff, by the way. So I'm going to create a coupon. It's not created yet. Give me 10 minutes. It's going to be Powerhouse, and you can get anything in that category for free.
Okay. And then Melissa, what about you?
I'm hanging out more on LinkedIn these days. So you can find me in my first name, middle name, Melissa Esmeralda. Also on Instagram at MEO Marketing Group. And then the gift that I have for everybody today, it's 10 subject line formulas for attention grabbing emails. There's some additional bonuses in there. So like some psych hacks, how to build your authority, all that stuff, because the goal is for you to use it now and to outgrow it. Because subject lines are super important, especially with all these updates. But I mean, like, it's helpful for like when you're communicating like with clients as well, and you just don't know what to put in the subject line box.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, you guys definitely go grab all their things, stock them. These are great people that know what they're doing and are so generous with their time. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm Faith Mariah. You can find all the past episodes from the Power Hour show at faithmariah.com. I feel like I try to throw my weight around a little bit and like guilt everybody to coming on my show so I can like share with my community all the awesome people I know and that we're connected to. We have the summer bundle coming out, which I hope you guys will check out. That's an all niche bundle we're doing, and that's a new thing that we're offering the community now. And it's going so well, we're already plotting one for the fall. So if you're not in the summer one, what I would do is sign up for the summer one so you guys can see how it works. You can see kind of what we're going to be looking for, what a bundle is, how it goes, and then you can apply to be in our fall bundle, which we'll be recruiting for probably in the next couple months. So just keep your eyes out. And that's going to be a way you can get leads for your email list. And it's not B2B. These are mostly targeted at B2C. So I'm looking for crafters. I'm looking for personal development people. I'm looking for all that. And then end of June, I have something really big coming for you guys. We're doing another Get It Done week, and the lineup is so good. You guys are going to die. By the time this goes live, you guys might be able to see the lineup, but if not, it'll be out soon. It's really hard for me not to like spill all the details, but that's all I'm allowed to tell you right now. The team is like, please don't tell everybody, because things change as like events come. They're like, please don't like blab everything all over the internet. So we've got details for that coming. That'll be a free event that we're doing. And then the Becoming Boss Mastermind is going to be opening the beginning of July. I know a lot of people were talking about needing a community, needing help. And we really offer, I think, one of the best places to get community as far as like community events, networking, coaching, live calls, support, co-working. Like we have all of it available to you guys in the mastermind. And I like to think of it as like the ultimate entrepreneur support group. So you get my marketing brain and my social worker brain, and I've created an entrepreneur. It's basically an entrepreneur support group. So that's it for today. Thank you guys again so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you. You guys have to check them out. Check out all their stuff. Please support them. Go stalk them on the internet. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.